If you were to kind of look back at 2020 and maybe broadening it out to future pandemics that
Mm.
could be much more dangerous, what kind of response, how do we fail in the response, and how could we do better?
Mm.
So the gain of function research is discussing which, the question of we should not be creating viruses that are both exceptionally contagious and exceptionally deadly to humans. But if it does happen, perhaps through natural evolution, natural mutation,
Yeah.
is there interesting technological responses on the testing side, on the vaccine development side, on the collection of data, or on the basic sort of policy response side, or the sociological, the psychological side?
Yeah, there's all kinds of things. And most of what I've thought about and written about, and again discussed in that long bit with Sam, is dual use. So most of the countermeasures that I've been thinking about and advocating for would be every bit as effective against a zoonotic disease, a natural pandemic
Mm-hmm.
of some sort, as an artificial one. The risk of an artificial one, even the near term risk of an artificial one, ups the urgency around these measures immensely, but most of them would be broadly applicable. And so I think the first thing that we really want to do on a global scale is have a far, far, far more robust and globally transparent system of detection. And that can happen on a number of levels. The most obvious one is, just in the blood of people who come into clinics exhibiting signs of illness.
Mm-hmm.
And we are certainly at a point now with relatively minimal investment. We could develop in-clinic diagnostics that would be unbelievably effective at pinpointing what's going on in almost any disease when somebody walks into a doctor's office or a clinic. And better than that, this is a little bit further off, but it wouldn't cost tens of billions in research dollars. It would be, a relatively modest and affordable budget in relation to the threat. At-home diagnostics that can really, really pinpoint, particularly with respiratory infections, because that is generally, almost universally, the mechanism of transmission for any serious pandemic. So somebody has a respiratory infection. Is it one of the, significantly large handful of rhinoviruses, coronaviruses, and other things that cause common cold? Or is it influenza? If it's influenza, is it influenza A versus B? Or is it, a small handful of other more exotic, but nonetheless sort of common respiratory infections that are out there? Developing a diagnostic panel to pinpoint all of that stuff, that's something that's well within our capabilities. That's much less a lift than creating mRNA vaccines, which obviously we proved capable of when we put our minds to it. So do that on a global basis. And I don't think that's irrational, because the best prototype for this that I'm aware of isn't currently rolling out in Atherton, California, or Fairfield County, Connecticut, or some other wealthy place. The best prototype that I'm aware of this is rolling out right now in Nigeria. And it's a project that came out of the Broad Institute, which is, as I'm sure you know, but some listeners may not, is kind of like an academic joint venture between Harvard and MIT. The program is called Sentinel, and their objective is, and their plan, and it's a very well-conceived plan, a methodical plan, is to do just that in areas of Nigeria that are particularly vulnerable to zoonotic diseases, making the jump from animals to humans. But also there's just an unbelievable public health benefit from that. And it's sort of a three-tier system where clinicians in the field could very rapidly determine, do you have one of the infections of acute interest here, either because it's very common in this region, so we want to diagnose as many things as we can at the front line, or because it's uncommon but unbelievably threatening, like Ebola. So frontline worker can make that determination very, very rapidly. If it comes up as a we don't know, they bump it up to a level that's more like at a fully configured doctor's office or local hospital. And if it's still at a we don't know, it gets bumped up to a national level. And it gets bumped very, very rapidly. So if this can be done in Nigeria, and it seems that it can be, there shouldn't be any inhibition for it to happen in most other places. And it should be affordable from a budgetary standpoint. And based on Sentinel's budget and adjusting things for things like, very different cost of living, larger population, et cetera. I did a back of the envelope calculation that doing something like Sentinel in the US would be in the low billions of dollars. And, wealthy countries, middle income countries can't afford such a thing. Lower income income countries should certainly be helped with that, but start with that level of detection. And then layer on top of that other interesting things like, monitoring search engine traffic, search engine queries for evidence that strange clusters of symptoms are starting to rise in different places. There's been a lot of work done with that. Most of it kind of academic and experimental, but some of it has been powerful enough to suggest that this could be a very powerful early warning system. There's a guy named Bill Lampos at University College London who basically did a very rigorous analysis that showed that symptom searches reliably predicted COVID outbreaks in the early days of the pandemic in given countries by as much as 16 days before the evidence started to accrue at a public health level. 16 days of forewarning can be monumentally important in the early days of an outbreak. And this is, a very, very talented, but nonetheless very resource constrained academic project. Imagine if that was something that was done with a NORAD-like budget. Yeah. So, starting with detection, that's something we could do radically, radically better.
So aggregating multiple data sources in order to create something. This is really exciting to me, the possibility that I've heard inklings of creating almost like a weather map of pathogens, like basically aggregating all of these data sources, scaling many orders of magnitude up at home testing and all kinds of testing that doesn't just try to test for the particular pathogen of worry now, but everything, like a full spectrum of things that could be dangerous to the human body, and thereby be able to create these maps like that are dynamically updated on an hourly basis of how viruses travel throughout the world. And so you can respond, like you can then integrate, just like you do when you check your weather map and it's raining or not. Of course, not perfect, but it's very good predictor of whether it's going to rain or not. And use that to then make decisions about your own life. Ultimately, give the power information to individuals to respond. And if it's a super dangerous, like if it's acid rain versus regular rain, you might want to really stay inside as opposed to risking it. That, just like you said, I think it's not very expensive relative to all the things that we do in this world, but it does require bold leadership